Good day, everybody. My name is Brian Wheeler from Scarlet Shadow Gaming. You may also know me as Dusk Demon. Today, I have decided to showcase a trip down through the process of creating a card game. This game is called Conflux Elemental Ascendancy. Now, I will preface all of this by saying this is very much the very first rendition, very first playtesting. I haven't gotten any artwork or anything for it. We're just basically playing with words on cards. A lot of these abilities and aspects of the game are definitely not going to be how they are final stages. But if you do have any ideas, any tips, or anything like that that you would like to share, feel free to reach out. Um, the biggest objective of this game is to have a strategic and competitive trading card game that's not quite at the difficulty levels of say like Magic the Gathering. Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon, while strategic, I do find that a lot of times the and even in Magic, the cards are so advanced that when it comes time to actually play test them or play them in the field, some cards are just really runaway monsters, so to speak. So I want to try to keep this one a little bit more simple, yet be still very strategic and competitive. With that in mind, the concept is that you are a spellcaster. My daughter's over here sitting here listening. That you are a spellcaster or a mage. You are going to be creating what's known as a spell stack. You can have up to 3 of them on the battlefield at the time. You also have a main deck as well as a main deck. Cutting mat here for an example. It's of my playtest decks I'm currently messing with. We'll have your mana deck on your left and your main deck over here on the right. Off the, not technically. Now I haven't shuffled these yet, but your spell stack it starts at tier 0 or yeah, not tier 0, tier 1. Tier 1 cards cost 0, and they are considered your base. Now, you're going to want to have more of these in your deck to begin with because you are going to want to have at least one in your opening hand. Your main deck is 40 cards, and your mana deck is 20. I don't think that number is going to change unless I see something drastic that shows that maybe we need to switch that around. Also, as of right now, all of the spells are cards that have to be upgraded on top of your base tier. So each of your bases are an elemental manipulation skill. So there's fire, earth, water, wind, lightning, darkness, light, and void. So there's a good number of them. And then your mana, although you can have, and the mana is going to be probably the biggest struggle for us to figure out. And of course, mana costs for all the cards. But your mana deck is you can have any number of like the generic or pre-aspected mana, which we'll go over that in a second. But then you're limited to 2 of any of the rare or legendary mana cards, 2 each. I don't really want you to just fill that mana deck with all those. This is why there's a limit of 2 each. In the future, when more sets come down the line, it would be possible to have just a 20 card mana deck with a bunch of the rarer cards, but then you'd only have 2 of each, so it is a little bit harder to get those. The way mana is going to work is you have unaspected or generic mana, and then you also have aspected mana. So, for instance, this one is a darkness mana. Now, there are 2 ways of getting aspected mana. The first is to play an aspected mana in your mana pool. The second, if you had a spell stack going, go ahead and darkness one. Let's also have, say, a. So, in order to aspect mana, you can either play that aspected mana in your mana pool. If it is in your mana pool and it is already aspected, you can use this to activate either a generic, so any aspect, or you can use it for the stack that requires a darkness aspect. So let's say you had 2 stacks that required a darkness. This could be used for either stack. Now, if you don't have a darkness mana already in your mana pool, you can take a generic and put it on your stack, which you actually want to put it above. So this is going to aspect that mana so that it is equal to the manipulation skill at the bottom. Show's done. Well, all right. So again, once played on a stack, it becomes aspected to that stack. So this generic mana is now considered darkness. Now, one strategic method of this is now this mana can only be used to activate abilities of this stack, contrary to this one, which could be used for this stack or another stack. Now, you can aspect up to 1 mana a turn, which is, again, preliminary. We'll see how things go. If mana looks like it's too slow or too tedious this way, then we might seek out an alternative method. Likewise, you can play up to 1 mana card from your mana deck per turn. Initially, I was thinking you would either get to choose the draw from your spell or choose the draw from your mana deck. I'm going to test that way, and then I'll also test where you could just play 1 from the top every turn. The benefit of always getting to play 1 is that you would get to always guarantee that you're going to have a mana until that deck runs out. The downside of that is because of how it kind of streamlines it or makes it too easy. There's not as much strategy involved in determining whether or not, oh, should I play a mana this turn or should I draw a card this turn? Likewise, we may just make it where you have a starting hand size, and then after that, you always have a minimum hand size. So we could say your starting hand size is 5. If you would go below 3 at the end of your turn, you draw up to your minimum hand size of 3. So if you go down to 2 at the end of your turn, you would draw 1 card. That's just another option. The way tiers work is, let's actually see if we can find a tier 2 here. Let's say we have tier 1 lightning manipulation here. If we would like to tier it up, you'll notice here we have chain shock. It has a cost of 1 generic and 2 lightning aspect. Now we can either so let's say we have had So we've been playing along. We have 4 mana out. We've played lightning on this, say, twice already. And now we have drawn Chain Shock and we want to play it. Well, in order to play it, the stack that we want to play it on must have 1 generic plus 2 lightning aspect. So you have to make sure you have at least 1 generic in your mana pool and 2 lightning aspect on your stack. No, sorry. I think what initially testing, I want to have all the mana on the stack because I have cards that will wipe out a stack, and we'll get over that in a second. But you have to have all your mana tied to the stack that you want to play on. So this is why I'm thinking because of the sheer number of mana, I may just make it where you can play a mana every turn from your mana. I think that's how we're going to play first. But once you've played your tier 2, and the reason why you have to have this mana is because in order to activate it, either for attack or defense, you must have a minimum of those mana attached to that stack. So now that you have this, you can choose to attack with it, which is to deal its attack activation, or you can choose to use it on your opponent's turn. If they choose to attack you, you can activate its defensive activation. You cannot attack with it and defend with it in your opponent's turn. You can only choose one or the other for your next turn. The benefit of this, though, is this does have a special ability, which currently we do have a few keywords that we're using. Find them. In the aspect of this one, we are actually using stagger. Means any activation that they would make actually costs 1 more. So if they want to attack with it on their next turn, they must spend an additional generic mana. That can either be if it's already on the pool or from your generic pool itself. So for this instance, we're going to say, oh, I want to attack. So we are going to attack. And this is going to deal 2 lightning damage to an opponent and stagger up to 2 of their tier 1 stacks. Now, you notice this is tier 1 stacks, which means if they have only tier 3, you cannot stagger that stack. So if they have a stack that they want to defend with, which they can only defend with tier 2 and higher. Oh, sorry. We decided we were going to do tier 1 as well. So you can defend with even tier 1, but tier 1s only deal or reduce 1 point of damage. So for instance, if they want to block the lightning, if they have, depending on the element that they're blocking with, it could reduce by half damage or full damage, which it all just depends. So like, for instance, if they're attacking me and I defend with this, I can reduce incoming damage by 2. Unless it's water, then I can reduce it completely. Anything other? I think this is worded. Reduce incoming damage by 2 versus water, full others half. I'll have to go back and read my notes on that. The defenses might be a little bit wonky right now. My thought was that it would just reduce it by the amount of damage it can reduce. Okay, so it can reduce damage dealt by water by 2. Anything else, it would only reduce by 1. That's what it meant. Full or by half. What do you want? Chips? Grab chips? A lot of this is probably going to be a mixture of like back and forth deciding things because we are still very much playtesting this. And so even I don't know how exactly I want this thing to play out. You want me to open your Cheetos? There you go. So the first thing I want to do is I want to test, see what it's like to do an initial play based on our current rules. Some of the other conditions we have are freezing, which makes it where they can't activate that stack. Um, at all, which means that it's very similar to exhausting, except silent freeze makes it where I feel like these are redundant. Let them go back over the status effect. Because right now our initial thoughts on the conditions was freezing, exhausting, silencing, disrupting, and staggering. But looking at the notes that we've decided on, um, they're very redundant. Exhausting and disrupting prevents attacking or defending for 1 turn, while freezing and silencing prevents activating and losing abilities. We'll probably sit this down to probably silence and maybe staggered. We'll figure that out at a later time. For right now, we'll treat them all as basically. So let's start with our opening hand of 5. 5. And we want to make sure that we have at least one tier 1, which I do. Beyond that, I don't have a lot going on here. One other thing I want to mention is anytime your stack does not have the minimum number of mana to be used, that tier gets burned. It is discarded. So if your opponent is able to move a mana out from underneath a stack, it could potentially completely just disrupt that stack and be burned. Anytime it is burned in this situation where one is moved or a number of them are moved, any aspected mana, well, no, because we're not destroying the stack. We're just one has been removed. So yeah, the tier would get discarded. Whatever happened to that mana, whether it be sent back to your mana pool or destroyed, it is now gone. Your tier 1 still has that. Now there are some very unique and powerful abilities that will just straight up destroy the stack itself. When that happens, every card, including tier 1, tier 2, whatever, as well as any aspected mana. So let's say it was aspected for darkness. You had 2 darkness, 1 generic. Your aspected mana would get burned or destroyed with the stack, and your generic mana would get sent back to your mana pool. Kind of a weird thing, I know. So the first thing we're going to want to do is make sure we can have our tier 1 stack ability. Now I do currently just want a limit of 3 stacks, but we'll begin with that. We will get to play our first card this turn. Our first mana is a darkness. So you notice I still currently have 4 cards in hand. I can't do anything else. I would go ahead and aspect the mana, and I would then pass a turn. On my next turn, I kind of do like the fact that you'd have to choose one or the other. So on this turn, I could choose either to draw 1 or 2. Let's try it like this first. So for this, I'm going to choose to do a mana. That kind of sucks. I do have tier 2 darkness. Unfortunately, they require 1 generic and dark. This is where playing 1 every turn probably would have been beneficial. But the other issue is now if I had drawn one of these and played one of these, I probably at best case I would have drawn another tier 1. But I do want to keep it kind of slow and steady. So let's just say for now you have to choose the draw. So at this point I could just deal 1 damage. So that's what I would do. I will say you do have to have it says 0 cost here. Technically, you still have to have either a generic or a aspected mana. You can have a generic down here or an aspected mana on the stack. So for this, we would go ahead and just deal 1 damage. We would put a marker here. I don't know if we want to tap it, want to like spend the mana on it. I think that would be a little difficult once you have the stacks on there. You would spend the mana, activate the ability. So I'm choosing to deal 1. Opponent, if they have the ability to block, they attack on their turn. Which, by the way, if you're the starting player, you cannot attack or activate abilities of your cards. But the second player does get to start. So now that this was my second turn, I do get to activate that. So again, on my next turn, I'm going to choose to play this again. I'm getting very unlucky. So again, I would just go and deal 1 damage. Now I'm going to choose to actually draw from here. And look at that. I drew a tier 1 Earth Manipulate. So with this, I will go ahead and aspect one of these to my other tier 1. But now I have 2 tier 1 stacks that I can choose to either attack or defend with. I'm going to go ahead and choose to attack with both. We'll go into defenses when I have a second person to actually test with right now. Today it's just me. So now I really want to get more mana that I can play up here. So on my next turn, I will get another lightning mana. This is where I kind of put extra mana in this. I would have probably just done all of it generic and just made it where you had to do that. But then it would have been a little bit difficult because we do have fusion cards, which requires like, say, dark and water or void and water or something like that. Or lightning and air for storm elements. With those in mind, it's kind of hard to differentiate if they're just, say, generic on them. So, and I'm not going to do like stickers or anything like that. It'd be kind of cool if we could come up with a way for a card to be able to change. But I feel like that would probably be a bit of an expensive card treatment. Imagine digital cards. If this was an online game, it could be done pretty. But all right. So again, attack, defend, whatever you may choose to do. On the next turn, I'm going to get another mana. We got another darkness mana. I can now do this. Now, I could have put my lightning mana up there, and it could be used as your generic or any color. If I really wanted to, I could have already done that, and that would have let me play one of my tier 2 up here. Probably should have, but in case I had drawn a lightning manipulation, I kind of wanted to save that. So again, we'll go ahead and do our normal attacks and everything. With in mind that I know that I will get to activate my tier 2 of this on my next turn, I'm going to still choose to do mana just because of one of the cards I have. We have a generic. So I will actually take this generic and now place it on here. So I now have my 1 generic and 2 darkness needed. I actually have 2 different dark cards in hand. I have Dreadbind, which allows me to deal damage and then make a target not attack not be able to defend on its next turn. So they could attack with it, but they couldn't choose to defend with it. Not sure if that's how I want that card to be, but that's what we're going to do. But for this one, we're going to do Dark Bargain, because this is going to let us draw 3 spell cards and take 3 damage. I think this might actually be a little bit overpowered. This probably should be like almost like a magic brainstorm effect, maybe. We look at the top 3, choose one to put on our hand, put the other 2 on the bottom, and then take 3. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But I am going to choose to go ahead and activate that ability. So I'm going to draw 3. Ooh, and then we're going to take 3 damage. Now, there is the maximum hand size of 5. So I will have to be discarding a card down. In this case, I'm actually going to get rid of that darkness red bind. And then on the next turn, because we have this ability, I don't see any point in ever drawing from here again. Until we don't have life to really give up for it. Draw 3 and take 3 seems like a very overpowered ability with the high life total that I was initially thinking of starting at, of like 40. But I think we're probably going to be dropping that down to like 25. And then again, still probably making Dark Bargain something like, look at the top 3, put one. For this, we're going to go ahead and get ourselves another Earth mana. And I say we go ahead and aspect this. Then let's go ahead and activate that again, taking our 3 and drawing 3. I'm actually going to do this as Brainstorm. So I think what I want to do, what I really want to do is get myself a lightning, because I have 2 lightning mana down. I think I'm going to choose to put this card, which is an Aegis of Stone, which is actually probably one of my favorite cards. It's unique, and when I get to play it, I will show you. So now I can do my 1 damage here. There is one thought is, should we allow you to be able to activate a stack more than once as long as you have the mana for it? Because in this case, I could activate Earth Manipulation twice. That's one thing to think about later. Again, I now have 6 cards in hand, so we are going to have to discard. Knowing my plan for Earth mana, I think I'm actually going to discard this one. And then we'll go ahead and take our next turn here. Now we have fire, which is cool. Another thing that I'm wondering is once we have a tier 2, should we make it where you could add another tier 2 to it and be able to activate one or the other ability? Should we make it where you can um, replace the tier 2? So if I didn't like for example, if I wanted to play, let's say I wanted to aspect this fire here into the earth. I have a generic and 2 earth, so I put Quake Pulse on it. Should we make it where at a later turn, if I choose to replace my tier 2 with, say, Aegis of Stone, I can do that? Or should we make it where you could have both and you could choose which one that you wanted to do? Well, that's just something I want to look into. I think it adds a lot of versatility and really puts an emphasis on like what a true spellcaster is if they have the ability to do two. But then again, they could have had 2 stacks of Earth if they really wanted to, but then they would have to still, in the long run, put mana in both in order to get both effects. So by putting on here, you just get to the ability to have both effects earlier, but you still wouldn't be able to activate both of them in the same turn, unlike if you had 2 stacks. So it's a matter of, do we want to force them to be slower to get their activations, or do we want to make it true spellcaster like? I think it's kind of cool to be able to have multiple. So we're going to play test that first. So for this, we're going to do our brainstorm effects, taking another 3. Well, I did find what I was looking for, which was that lightning manipulation. Put those down. I'm going to play that as well as aspects. Already aspected, so aspect. Um, Another instance of the mana was, do we make it where you can only aspect once a turn or once per stack? Um, that's something it's honestly just going to take time to figure out if that's necessary or not. But for this, what we're going to do is we're going to activate Quake Pulse as well. This is going to deal 2 earth damage to an opponent's life points, as well as stagger up to 2 enemy stacks. So the next activation deals, this is deals -1 damage. The stagger was supposed to be cost more. So I think stagger should deal less damage, while disrupting should be +1 cost. That's what we'll say. And then we'll say silencing or disrupting, one of the other abilities would do something else. All right. So now we will move on. Every turn, we're going to on aspects. And of course, you notice I haven't done any defending or anything. Really haven't had a choice because I only have the 1 darkness ability. We're going to go ahead and continuing on. We now have a generic. I'm going to do the brainstorm, which, if this was a real game, this would be very, very dangerous to be doing. I'm going to take a fire bolt. Can't currently use it this turn, but I put it. Oh, I just realized I didn't take fire. I took lightning. Uh, doesn't really matter. guess I'll take the manipulation instead. We can't play it. We're probably not gonna be able to play it. Good card is just discard if we need. So we'll go ahead and aspect here. I feel like having to aspect only once a turn is very slow. I'm gonna say we probably should make this where we can aspect once per stack. But then again, we did select this off pretty slow. We only had one manipulation spell at a time. So that made it seem where it was probably a little bit okay. So I don't know. More playtesting will kind of give us an idea. So for this, I'm now going to put my dual tier 2. Oh, well, I guess we'd have to aspect another. Let's try out the ability to do once per stack if necessary. I now have 2 tier 2 spells. Now there is going to be a danger to this, as if I play a tier 3 or need to, I could just destroy this whole stack. Although I don't currently have a tier 3 for that one. So Aegis of Stone, like I said, was one of my favorite cards because it allows us to attach an Aegis ward to one of our stacks. Now, I don't currently have this, but I'm going to just put like this to it. I'm going to attach an Aegis to my Earth stack. So an Aegis allows me to discard this to either prevent 2 life point damage or cancel a condition that would be applied to the deck. So it's an extra like guard as well as protection from a status effect. So that counts as an activation because I spent the 2 generic and 2 earth for this. And I already activated this. I can go ahead and activate lightning manipulation to attempt to do damage. That would be turn. Draw again and go ahead and play that. Go ahead and aspect here. We'll go ahead and brainstorm. This would be exceptionally dangerous because we really don't have what's going on. Let me take this one so we can kind of give it an idea. And then, because of the fact that I did do that, I am going to aspect it. Oh, we should make the Aegis the ability to protect from being avoided too. That's interesting. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose to activate Aegis of Stone. I'm going to put another one of these on, say, lightning manipulation. And then I'm going to, because I have the mana for this, I have multiple fire. I guess I didn't need fire on there. I need 2 generic, 1 fire, 1 earth. So I have a fire, I have an earth, and I have technically 2 of any. So what I will do is I will actually show you what a tier 3 spell would look like. Tier 3 spells are basically the ultimate spells that you could. We're going to play Magma Elemental. This is going to deal 4 damage directly to an opponent's life points, as well as cause mana burn. So what we're going to do is we're going to detach up to 2 mana across enemy stacks, returning them to their owner's pool. So if this happens, like I was saying in the beginning, if their stack no longer has enough to keep their tier 2, so let's say they had a darkness manipulation like this one, I could remove one of their darkness from this stack and then one from another stack. And if their tier twos could no longer hold those tier twos, like they no longer had the proper mana, their tier two would be gone. It gets discarded. You notice after that, well, it says detach up to 2 mana. So the mana would actually get sent back to their mana pool. And then if their tier twos couldn't be supported, it would get discarded. But then with tier threes are considered like ultimate kind of finisher abilities. Once used, not only does this card get discarded, but the stack is actually going to get burned. So all aspected mana on this stack. So you'll see I have fire, earth, and earth. All of that is going to get discarded along with the spell. And of course, now my tier twos can no longer support, so they will get discarded as well. And my generic is going to go away. So once a stack is burned, it basically reverts back to its tier 1 elemental. Now, my thought is potentially, because it has an Aegis, that you could prevent part or all of that ability. I think that would be kind of dangerous precedent, because then everybody would just be running Aegis just to be able to protect against their own tier 3s. Which, to be fair, tier 3s are limited. You can only have one of each one in your deck. And they are a little bit more difficult to play because they're always fusion cards, so they always require different types of elements. So for this, I don't know. I will take ideas on that. Yeah, personally, I don't know what I would do. Technically, burning a stack is a status effect. Well, no, it's consumption effect, so it's really not even all spell card. Oh, actually, I have it where the whole thing would be destroyed, including the earth manipulation. So maybe the Aegis will prevent the tier 1 from being destroyed, but we'll take ideas on that. I'm gonna say that Aegis is gonna prevent the tier 1 from being destroyed, so that you still have access to it. But as you'll see, tier 3s are designed to be more powerful, but they're also designed to be extremely strategic. Once, like, you need to use them at a good time, otherwise it could be bad. I'm gonna say that they get destroyed. So I want to get to play with the fire elemental as well. So I've done that. I now have an open stack spot. I'm going to play fire manipulate. Now it's a new stack. I'm going to go ahead, aspect it, deal 1 damage, whatnot, call it good. Do my lightning, boom, done. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go and draw another one. All right, so we actually drew a special mana card. This is called Mana Surge. Mana Surge is a unique, and once played, it allows you to immediately provide 2 generic mana for this turn. I feel like that should just not be a turn. It should be permanent. Provides 2 generic. So with that in mind, we are actually, we're going to say it provides 2 generic. We're going to go ahead and aspect that to our lightning. We're going to put our generic here, fire manipulation. Then I'm going to tier 2 my lightning. We now have the ability to deal 2 lightning damage and stagger up to 2 tier 1 enemy stacks. Now I've went down below 3, but we still have Dark Bargain. We're going to go ahead and do our 3. I'm going to pick this one. This is also one of my favorite, probably fire manipulation spells. Although we can't play it this turn, so we'll go ahead and activate anything we haven't done, and then we'll go to our next turn, play another land, mana. I'm going to you can use any to pay for generic, but you can't use the generic to pay for fire. Doesn't really do me any good there. So I guess I'll just do my abilities here. Up 3 again. Get this. This is actually not a spell stat card. This is a card that actually requires you to have stuff in your mana pool. This requires 1 generic, and actually no, this could be played on any spell stack, but it is also a temporary card. So as long as you have a spell stack that has at least 1 generic and 1 aspect, you can play this. But if you play this on that stack, you cannot play any other ability of that stack, even once this card is destroyed, because you've mana for it. So for instance, I could put it on here, because I'm activating this, this mana gets activated. Draw 2 mana cards from a mana deck and immediately aspect one of them. Like, put it on there. So I'll get 2. I can immediately put one on a stack. So we will go ahead and put one on here. This here. Oh, this shouldn't be draw 2. It should be look at. We'll make a note of that. Because remember, we don't actually choose the like we put them here, and then we can put them there. That's gone. So we now have 2 generic and 1 fire, which is still not enough. But move on to the next turn. Got a generic. We'll use our draw 3. We'll look at that 3 ability again. This one. At this point, we really don't have life points to be activating that every time. But I'm going to put this over this. We've already activated the stack this turn. And we don't have extra mana to do it again, so that's just going to be that. Yeah, I guess we just keep on keeping on. I feel like until I get another fire thing, it just keeps attacking. Sorry, Dreadbind does let us deal 2 darkness damage and make a target enemy stat cannot defend during its controller's next turn. So it can defend this turn, but on its next turn, it wouldn't be able to defend, so they would only. I guess you could say this is actually a. You would actually say they can't defend this turn. So you would say which stat can't defend. So you could, like, if they have a light manipulation stack, you could say that one couldn't defend, and then the defend. We really need to get. There we go. So here's another rare. We're going to put under fire manipulation. Prismatic mana provides 2 aspects, any. Counts as any aspect for casting or aspect of detachment. So because I now have plenty of fire, it counts as 3 fire, 2 generic on here basically. I am going to play Scorching Lance. Could have put that under here, and I could have played. Yeah, we're gonna kind of got the general idea here. Where's my? That's right. I forgot that I put the Prismatic Lance in here, Prismatic mana, because both of the decks technically have one card that requires mana outside of what it can produce, which is so dumb. But I thought it would just be a neat little funny thing. So if I had played this on the Lightning, I could have played one of the more powerful tier 3s, which is Storm Titan. Now, your opponent has a choice here. They either take 5 life points directly, or all their stacks are exhausted during the next turn, so they cannot be used to attack or defend. So either way, they're going to potentially take a lot, because like I would be able to deal 4 damage from Scorching Lance plus 2, so they would be taking 6 on my turn, because they would have been exhausted, and they wouldn't be able to attack on their turn. I could have done that, and that would have, of course, then burnt the stack again, except for the generic. Which, by the way, the special rare things are not considered generic. They would have all been started, with the exception of Aegis, but we just couldn't decide what we wanted to do with that. So at this point, we would just continue on, continuing on. I really would have needed to add another player here so we could actually have tested the whole life points aspect of it. But that is kind of like the basics of how the, I'm envisioning the game to be played. I'll kind of take some notes and I'll play test a little bit more in other areas. I do think that we will, at least for now, from now on, we will test it with always getting to play a mana every turn from your mana pool, your mana deck, and then getting to aspect once per stack every turn. I do think aspecting once per stack will provide a more smooth gameplay. But if in the future we discover that that is not the case, then we will definitely make a change then. So the next stage we definitely need to go and look at is double checking the wording on some of these cards, as well as the status effects. I'm actually going to make these, so we need to rework the status effects. I do want to make sure our life total is lower. Initially, I'd said 50 for some reason. This needs to be either, probably needs to be like 25 or 30. And of course, our goal is to get that down to 0. We may have to focus on adding in some cards that will allow us to actually put some back. So we may want cards that let us recycle our mana. So this would be taking mana from a discard pile and either to return either to the mana deck, which is I don't know, not great card. Mana pool or directly aspected. I kind of like the idea of having a card, and one of the other things is having cards that directly don't play on, but have to be activated by a stack. So, so the recycling mana would be, let's say that you can take one from your 1 or 2, depending on the card, from your discarded pool mana, discarded pile, to directly return to a stack. If it's aspected, then it's aspected, whatever. The other thing is actual non-permanent spells, which are the spells activated by a stack. Stack mana. But are one-time use. So these are similar to the ultimate abilities, but they don't burn the stack, so they're weaker. They're more utilitarian. So we definitely want, like I said, play top mana card every turn. Aspect once per stack per turn. What else should we look at? Um, oh yeah, updating cards. Card effects and statuses. Dark Bargain is definitely one that needs to be updated. It should not just be draw 3, take 3. We're going to definitely turn that into a brainstorm effects. I'm wondering if maybe we should even make it go down the lines of a true bargain where you take one, the other two, or one of the two gets discarded, so on and so forth. Another option is, do we keep it kind of streamlined where we have the mana deck and the spell deck separately? Or do we go the magic route where all of it is one deck? I do think that provides a lot more randomness to it, and you could get stuck. At least with this, you getting stuck is more along the lines of which stacks you've used and not just not drawing a card that you need. So you could streamline it to where you're only doing, say, two different elements. You're only using fire and lightning or something like that. So then your mana deck is a lot more streamlined. We'll have to test a deck style like that versus uh, ones with like four elements like these two starter decks have. I do think that having three or four elements gives you a lot more variety and a capability of doing things. I didn't see too many issues with not having enough cards. Like I had tons of spells in my hand. I was just not able to play them, which is why I decided to do the ability to have two tier two abilities on a stack. I don't think we should go three. I think being able to double up is probably enough. The question on that is whether or not we should have require enough mana for both spells. So if both of them required one generic and two aspected, do we require two generic and four aspected? Or do we just still require one generic and two aspected, and once used for one ability, they can't use it for another? They could still put more on if they wanted to be able to activate the stack a second time, as long as they had the mana. But that requires just significant every turn aspecting mana to that. So long game that would be fine, and it would allow you to get two activations as long as you had two different tiers. So we'll test double up tier twos. What else do we need to check with? Obviously, I need to get somebody else in here to assist me by being another player. So second player, so that we can actually test the whole defensive aspect of the game. So we can really drive home like the strategy needed. Because you'll see when I had three, there was a time where I had one that all it could do was draw me cards and deal damage to me, and the other one was dealing one damage to my opponent. Which, if they had defenses, they could have been dealing damage to me every single turn. I could not have stopped it. So that's where that strategy is going to come in. So we're really going to need that second player in here so that I can test that out. I don't think I want to do different, like more elements, but my original idea was that we could have tier twos that were, say, lightning and air, which would be a storm element, kind of like the tier three, like storm uh, ability that we had. And you could do like things like kind of like fusion spells, if you know what I'm talking about. So they would deal damage based on a different element, and that element could potentially like bypass certain defenses, or have special abilities. And those fusion cards would require additional setup, but that's probably something to be like another set, a fusion set. But that's definitely something I would want to have kind of worked out before we did the first set, just so we knew that it would work in long term. The other big thing is, what is our long term like longevity for this game? Do we think this is going to be like, oh, it's just going to be a quick little, here's one or two sets, or one set and like some, not DLC, 'cause it's not, like additional cards? Kind of like, what is it? Cards Against Humanity has the base set, and then they have like the bigger, blacker box, and like, so it's just like enhancement sets. The other issue is I really like, although using AI to help like make like hard effects is fine. I refuse to use them for the art. I've used AI generated art in the past for things, but when it comes to trading cards and the community that I love when it comes to trading cards, I think it's just destroying what we have already built. To use AI art for that, even using AI for just the cards, is more of along the lines of just speeding up the process. It's like I've told it what I want it to, like what kind of cards I want. Let's spit out 50 iterations of this card. Um, so it's really just saving time in that manner. But when it comes to the actual art, definitely want to get actual artists. Somebody's mentioned trying to get just people who want to get their start in art, kind of get known. But I would really like to pay artists. So once I can get this flushed out, if I can get a community around this game, we can get like a Kickstarter in the future. I do want to make sure that a lot of that Kickstarter is to get actual artists as well as for marketing and, of course, building the first set and subsequent sets after that. So if you're interested in helping out, I will try to make like a Discord community. See if we can't get a group of people who can come up with some ideas and everything they would like to see this game become. If you even think this game is worth it or think it's stupid, feel free to just let me know. Um, at the very least, this is going to become a game that me and friends will play. But I just felt like we could come and make this game something fun and enjoyable for everyone. Um, who knows? Maybe we can even get this to be a digital rendition someday. But for now, this is what I'm going to be working on. Hopefully, we can get a bigger community. We can come up with other things to work on. Feel free to shoot questions, give me suggestions, anything you may want to do on that. Um, yeah, we've been over an hour on this, so I think we're going to end this first video here. Well, let's go over just a few other things that I know we've done. We've talked about that. Elemental advantages, we kind of talked about that, does need more reworking. See if that's even worth doing or if it should just be straight up cost. For the most part, that should be, yeah, that should be, yeah, that should be everything that we needed to talk about in this first one. So without anything else, I'm going to say thank you for watching. And once again, please like and subscribe and leave comments down below. I will try to get a Discord and maybe even like a a forum thing going for suggestions. Thank you very much for watching.